Humans cheat gravity by falling down and standing up again instantly. The lecture hall of the Intergalactic Academy of Higher Knowledge had seen thousands of species shuffle, slither, buzz, or glide into its chambers, but never before had it hosted someone like Cadet Mara Ketzler, a human exchange student from a planet most of the alien students barely recognize on their star maps. The Academy was renowned for cultivating the sharpest strategic minds, with students trained under the guidance of professors who had lived centuries and memorized entire libraries. It was the place where the youngest of the Quantitative could debate energy transfer with the elder four scholars, where lax swimmers from the methane oceans of Zoe could argue chemical propulsion with the crystalline Enva. Mara, carrying nothing more than a battered notebook and a smile that unsettled the rest. Professor Haru, whose mantle shimmered with bioluminescent stripes of authority, posed what seemed like a routine exercise. What is the most efficient countermeasure when a vessel is outnumbered 3-1 in a gravity well? The students buzzed with their answers. The Jorald student advocated scattering decoys into orbit. The Jack recommended resonance bombs, and the Leak calculated fuel-to-thrust equations with endless precision. Mara raised her hand casually. The professors exchanged glances. Curious, humans were considered too young a species to add much to such a conversation. You, Professor Harold said with a wave of his tendrils. Mara shrugged. Turn off the engines. Pretend you're dead. Wait until they close in, then reboot the systems and drop rocks on them. Gravity will do most of the work. Silence. Total silence. The alien students tilted their heads, mandibles twitching, frills contracting, eye stalks freezing mid-blink. Even the air processor seemed to halt. The professors leaned forward as though unable to breathe. Professor Haru finally managed. Drop rocks? Mara grinned. Debris. Whatever's nearby, it's free ammunition. You don't need to outnumber them. You just need to make them think you're already beaten, and then remind them the universe itself is heavier than their ships. A deep rustle of disbelief swept across the lecture hall. Dropping rocks was not in the manuals. It was not in the centuries of simulations carefully designed to teach battle maneuvers. It was, however, obvious to any human who had grown up skipping stones across rivers and laughing at how gravity never lost. Another professor, a crystalline being named Vale, chimed in with a voice like wind chimes. You suggest weaponizing surrender? Mara scribbled in her notebook. Not surrender, trickery. You let them think they've already won, they relax, they stop watching. And that's when you hit them with what they don't expect. Around her, alien students whispered furiously. Some recoiled at the idea of deception, their cultures valuing open shows of strength. Others began feverishly writing notes, fascinated by the efficiency. One Jack muttered, "This changes all simulations." The professors exchanged glances filled with a mix of horror and fascination. For centuries, their academy had taught predictable solutions, codified strategies, equations that balanced perfectly on the scale of logic. And then here was this human casually dismantling the entire curriculum with a suggestion so simple it felt like blasphemy. Professor Harrell's voice cracked slightly as he asked, "And you believe this? Dropping rocks could be applied beyond simulation." Mara leaned back. It already was. In our history we had fleets outnumbered, and they used planets, moons, and rocks as weapons. It's messy, but war isn't supposed to be neat. The students gasped again, some covering sensory organs as though shielding themselves from the audacity. The academy was supposed to be about refinement, but this answer was raw and terrifying. A younger alien student finally whispered, "Humans fight with the universe itself." Mara chuckled. "We don't fight fair, that's all. Why should we? If you're smaller, weaker, or fewer, fairness just gets you wiped out. You survived by making the other side underestimate you." The words rippled across the room like shock waves. Suddenly the professors' lights dimmed, their respiratory sacs expanded sharply, their focus caught between admiration and dread. One of them exhaled. "This will have to be studied." Mara just opened her notebook to doodle a diagram of rocks falling on cartoon alien ships. The other students stared at the crude sketch as if it were a forbidden weapon blueprint, and though the lesson continued, the atmosphere had changed forever. Professor Val summoned Mara to the front of the hall the following day. The crystalline being's facets refracted the morning light into shards across the walls, but none of the brilliance distracted from the heavy air that filled the room. The entire academy had been buzzing since the human's answer, corridors alive with whispers about gravity, deception, and rocks. Alien students who once dismissed Mara as irrelevant now followed her at a cautious distance, as though she carried a dangerous flame. Cadet Kessler, Val began, his chimes resonant. You demonstrate this principle. Mara blinked. You mean drop rocks here? The students hissed nervously, some clicking mandibles, others fanning gills. Simulation chamber, Professor Harold clarified, his stripes of authority flickering in agitation. We wish to observe your method under controlled conditions. Mara shrugged and followed. The simulation chamber was immense, domed, and capable of projecting entire starfields with fleets of warships. Alien students settled into observation perches while professors arranged parameters. On the display, a lone vessel shimmered into being, dwarfed by 3 enemy ships encircling it in a gravity well. Standard scenario, Harold intoned. Let us see the human approach. Mara's vessel blinked alive on the console before her. She tapped a few controls, leaned back, and deliberately powered down. Lights winked out. The ship floated like wreckage. She surrenders already, scoffed a Jack cadet. Typical mammal. The enemy ships closed in, cautious but confident, their energy beams charged, shields flexing. Mara waited. At the last possible second, she slammed her hand on the restart. Systems flared, engines roared, and she rerouted minimal power to the gravitic manipulator, nudging a nearby cluster of debris rocks, hunks of old stations, fragments of ice. The enemy hadn't even bothered to scan them. Now those forgotten masses accelerated under the pull, slamming into enemy hulls with crushing force. 2 ships broke apart instantly, the third, stunned and unprepared, veered off course, vulnerable. Mara leaned forward. Game over. The final ship exploded into a shimmering cascade. The chamber fell into silence again. Then the silence fractured into chaos. Students leapt from perches, clicking and shouting. Some accused her of dishonor, others cheered. The professors could only stare at the wreckage, data playing an endless loop. Vale finally spoke. It works. Mara scratched her head. Told you. Professor Harl's stripes dimmed with unease. This will disrupt centuries of doctrine. He studied her as though she were a weapon herself. Why would humans ever think this way? Mara's eyes flicked to the gathered crowd. Because we had to. We grew up on a planet that throws storms, earthquakes, volcanoes and meteors at us. We learned to survive by turning disasters into tools. To us, every problem is just an opportunity with bad marketing. The line rippled through the students like an electric surge. They repeated it under their breath as though decoding a sacred mantra. The academy, once a fortress of polished equations, had been cracked open by improvisation. In the days that followed, Mara's reputation grew. Students from rival species began trailing her between classes, asking questions, testing theories, and daring her to explain human strategy. She explained how misdirection won as many battles as firepower, how laughter could unnerve an enemy, how humans built traps out of junk. At first the aliens resisted, claiming honor or tradition bound them. But when Mara sketched out diagrams of collapsing tunnels, feigned retreats or fire set deliberately against the wind, they stared in silence, confronted with ideas too practical to ignore. The professors, meanwhile, convened endless meetings. The Academy's Leadership Council debated whether allowing such thinking to spread would destabilize the order of instruction. They had long prized symmetry, neat tactical solutions, elegant balances of power, yet the human method thrived in chaos, twisting problems until they became weapons. Rumors spread that the council wanted to restrict Mara's participation, even send her home, but it was too late. Word of her tactics leaked through cadets' correspondence to their home world. Entire military commands began demanding reports on this rock strategy and the wider philosophy behind it. One afternoon, Mara walked into the refectory to find dozens of alien cadets clustered around her usual table. They demanded more explanations. One held up a data pad full of fleet movement, another brought blueprints of siege machinery, and all of them wanted to know the same thing. How would a human solve this? Mara laughed. Guys, I'm just trying to eat lunch. No, one insisted, a corn with glowing sensory pits. You are trying to change the universe. She rolled her eyes but still answered, drawing diagrams on napkins, with spilled sauce, explaining how ambushes work best when you let the enemy think they cornered you. Every word spread faster than the council could contain. Soon, alien cadets began challenging each other in duels of human-inspired tactics. They tricked one another, pretended to stumble, and then struck when least expected. Professors intervened, but could not halt the tide. Mara's unorthodox thinking had infected the academy like wildfire. Still, she sensed something darker brewing. One night, She overheard two senior professors whispering about an upcoming war. Somewhere beyond the academy walls, species had aligned against humans, convinced that such dangerous creatures needed to be suppressed before their ideas spread. Mara's stomach twisted. The academy was no longer just about learning. It was becoming a testing ground for survival itself. The council chamber filled with tension as professors gathered in concentric rings of light, their bodies flickering or shifting uneasily depending on species. Rumors had solidified into undeniable fact. An alliance of older alien civilizations had declared war on humanity. The pretext was simple: humans were disruptive, unpredictable, and dangerous. The truth was more chilling. Humanity's ideas threatened to unravel centuries of alien doctrine, and those who thrived on order wanted chaos extinguished. Mara sat at the center, her notebook balanced on her lap, eyes narrowed at the display of enemy fleets forming along human space. "So that's it," she said finally. "They're going to wipe us out because we think differently." Harlow's bioluminescent stripes dimmed in shame. "Your kind spread dangerous thinking. Many fear that if humans rise, no system will remain safe." Mara tapped her pen. "Safe for them, maybe not safe for the rest." The silence that followed was thick with unspoken truth. Alien cadets who had once sneered at her now looked at her with a strange mixture of hope and fear. They had learned from her, laughed at her sketches, debated her logic, and deep down some of them knew she was right. She closed her notebook with a snap. "Fine, then let's see if my so-called dangerous ideas can actually save us." The professors exchanged worried glances, but before they could object, dozens of cadets stood. A Jack with armored mandibles slammed his claw against his chest. "We fight with her." A quad flared its sensory pits. "We will not allow doctrine to kill imagination." Even Vale's crystalline body chimed brighter. "Perhaps it is time the universe learns to breathe in chaos." Within hours, the academy transformed. Simulation chambers became training grounds. Star maps lit the halls as Mara guided cadets through improvisational drill. She taught them how to feign collapse, how to lure enemies into overconfidence, how to weaponize the environment. Instead of reciting equations, students set up ambushes in stairwells and devised new maneuvers with scraps of machinery. For the first time in centuries, the academy pulsed with something alive: unpredictability. When the war arrived, it came with overwhelming force. Massive alien fleets surged across human borders, their ships bristling with centuries of refined technology. On paper, humanity stood no chance. But Mara had prepared more than humans. She had prepared the academy itself. Alien cadets who once trained only in theory now led squadrons alongside human fleets. They carried with them the rock strategy and 100 other tricks born of desperation and creativity. In the first great clash, 3 enemy armadas cornered a human defense line near a red dwarf star. Outnumbered, outgunned, they powered down their ships. The enemy approached, confident. Then gravity itself became a weapon. Entire asteroid belts were nudged into motion. Fields of debris turned into hammers. The enemy fleets shattered under the weight of their own arrogance. Word spread quickly. Reports from the front confused enemy commanders, humans pretending to surrender, fleets vanishing only to reappear behind enemy lines, damaged ships exploding at the perfect moment to collapse formations. Nothing aligned with the old doctrines. Every battle became unpredictable, terrifying, and behind every move was the ghost of a human smile in a sketch on a napkin. The academy's professors could only watch as their carefully balanced equations of war crumbled in the face of improvisation. Some feared it. Others secretly marveled. By the war's second year, defections spread. Alien cadets who had once been sworn to their species' doctrines now sided with humans, unable to deny the brilliance of thinking that turned weakness into strength. The enemy alliance fractured under paranoia, each blaming the other for loss. Mara herself took command of a joint fleet near the twilight world of Absurs. She stood on the bridge, notebook tucked into her jacket, giving orders that seemed absurd to her crew until they worked. Drift dead. Spin. Then fire. Thrusters. On my mark. Captain, that will expose our flanks. Yeah, but it'll expose theirs more. And it did. Entire fleets collapsed into chaos, undone by maneuvers no algorithm had ever predicted. Humans fought like storms, and the cadets trained by Mara magnified that storm into a hurricane. The final battle erupted at the edge of the Orion Divide, where the largest alien fleet gathered to end humanity once and for all. Thousands of ships glittered like a wall of inevitability. Mara faced her assembled commanders, humans, Jack, Quan, Anvith, Leek, all marked by her teachings. She sketched one last crude diagram, a line of rocks tumbling across the enemy formation. "Remember this," she told them. "It's not about strength. It's about making them believe they've already won, then showing them gravity has other plans." The battle raged for days. The enemy unleashed weapons honed over centuries, but the Allied fleets moved like dancers, feigning collapse, vanishing, then striking with ruthless precision. At the center of it all, Mara ordered the detonation of an abandoned station, its fragments dragged by the star's gravity straight into the enemy core. The cascading destruction ripped their formation apart. When the dust cleared, the once mighty alliance lay in ruin. Silence spread across the void. Humanity had survived. More than that, it had triumphed. Back at the academy, the halls were transformed. Equations still lined the walls, but beside them now hung crude sketches of rocks, rivers, storms, and arrows, scribbled in human handwriting. Students from dozens of species debated not just how to calculate power but how to twist it, bend it, and surprise it. The professors no longer gasped at Mara's answers. Instead, they invited her to teach. On the final day of the war's reckoning, Mara entered the lecture hall where it had all begun. Cadets filled the chamber. Professor Vale gestured for her to speak. She looked out at eager faces, mandibles, eye stalks, crystalline facets glinting with light, and said, "The universe is chaos. Stop pretending it isn't. Learn to dance with it, and you'll never run out of moves." The hall erupted, not with gasps, but with cheers. For the first time in the Academy's long history, the professors breathed freely, and at the center of it all, one human closed her notebook and smiled, knowing the future of war, of learning, and of survival had just been rewritten forever.